This is a guide to the linear learning plan. Okay, so this is designed for those of you who prefer a less visual method and something slightly more structured and plain on the page. Okay, so you've got your generic aspects at the top with academic year, week number, course date, subject, and so you can just fill out all of those according to your lesson. There is a box for safe working practices for those of you needing to take into account health and safety in your lessons. For most of us, it's some of those generic things, and in most lessons we don't have to write that into our lesson plan. However, if there's something out of the ordinary going on, or if there is a specific risk assessment in place for your lesson, then you need to put that there in your lesson plan. Okay, with any lesson plan, it's important to start with your learning outcomes. Okay, so this should detail what you hope for the students to achieve by the end of the lesson. Okay, the reason we do this is that you need to have an idea of where your students will be so that you know how the activities and resources can take them there. If you don't begin with this, it's difficult to then tie your activities and resources into where you need them to be at this stage in your scheme of work as well. Ideally, you'll have 3 learning outcomes. You might like to use more than this, particularly if you're doing a project-based learning kind of subject. If the learning is taking place over a number of weeks, then you might have more learning outcomes that the students are working towards. It's unlikely, however, in a normal lesson that students can achieve more than 3 overall learning outcomes. There are some ideas on the Planning for Learning site about how to write learning outcomes effectively. So if this has been an issue for you in the past, then take a look on there. It's got how to write them, but also how to share them with the learners and get learners involved in writing and dealing with learning outcomes. Okay, you've then got boxes for the steps of your lesson. So here you need a detailed description of the activities. So it's the thinking behind that particular activity in terms of getting your student towards achieving those learning outcomes that you've set. So the thinking behind it is really important, particularly if you're being observed in your lesson, so that the observer can see the thinking behind that particular activity. It's also great if you aren't being observed, because it can help you to evaluate the activities and resources you've decided upon and just check whether they are the right method for you to be using. You're being asked in this lesson plan, will you use C-SPAR? So are you going to use the suggested learning cycle of connect, share, present, apply, review? Now in some lessons that particular structure might not always work. This is particularly true of project-based learning, so feel free to maybe adapt some steps of your lesson or stages of your lesson occasionally if you don't want to use the C-SPAR approach. Okay, so in each of those boxes is the description of each stage of your lesson, what the teacher's going to be doing, what the students will be doing, and why it's happening in the way that it is. Okay, it's also got a useful box for timings, so that you can take timings of your lesson and just make sure that you're on track with all your intended activities. There is a stretch and challenge box, E&D, technology, English and maths, and employability. Now it's not essential to fill out each of these boxes for each of your activities in the lesson, but you should try and fill out each box for at least one of the activities during the lesson. Okay. Again, there are lots of details on the Planning for Learning site about how you can embed each of these things in your lessons and ideas about how you can do that successfully. Okay, so do take a look at that. Once you've filled out all of those aspects, you'll probably want to fill out your lesson shopping list. Okay, so these are the resources that you'll need inside the classroom. Often when teachers are getting observed, the observers are saying that teachers aren't fully prepared, so they haven't taken in everything they need. Students asking them for glue or scissors or pens or paper, and the teacher is unable to provide them because in our busy lives we often forget those kinds of things. Okay, so keep a shopping list. You know exactly what you need when you go into the classroom. You've got everything with you. Okay, so that's the linear learning plan. Now on the back of each of these learning plans you've got a little bit of detail about what each aspect should include. However, what we've also done for you is create the Planning for Learning site, and on there we've done some annotated examples of successful and unsuccessful lesson plans, so you can see what you need to be aiming for in terms of the written content. Okay, There are videos on the cycle learning plan and also the visual learning plan. So if you are wanting to look at using either of those, then take a look at the videos on the Planning for Learning site.